The midday sun bore down relentlessly on the Sarzor-Bargas border crossing, a familiar yet ever-chaotic place where the vibrant tapestry of human movement often concealed a colder, more calculated undercurrent. I can still recall the suffocating humidity, the acrid scent of diesel exhaust mingling with exotic spices, and the ceaseless symphony of shouting vendors, grinding truck engines, and impatient horns. It was a sensory overload that, for decades, had felt like the exhilarating backdrop to my husband Marcus's bold, audacious ventures. He was 65, and I, Eleanor, was 63. We were supposed to be winding down, looking forward to a peaceful retirement. Today, however, that very chaos became a cruel accomplice, cloaking the most brutal act of abandonment I could ever have conceived in our long years together. He simply walked away, melting into the dense throng of travelers and local hawkers, vanishing with my passport, our entire travel fund, and every single credit card we shared. One moment, he was a distinguished, confident figure beside me, promising a gilded future for our golden years. The next, an empty space in the scorching heat, leaving me bewildered, disoriented, and utterly stranded in a foreign land. My heart hammered against my ribs. Not with the usual tension of navigating complex international checkpoints, but with the dawning, terrifying realization that what had just transpired was no accident, no brief misunderstanding. It was deliberate. I was utterly alone. 6 months later, the scene would replay in my mind, but with a profoundly different, almost poetic outcome. A sleek, black-armored vehicle, its polished surface glinting under the brilliant sun, would pull up to that very same border. The insignia emblazoned on its side was unmistakable, the distinguished logo of Global Customs Solutions, one of the most powerful and influential customs firms in the world. Stepping out, not Marcus, but my steadfast daughters, Leela and Zara. Alongside my new legal team, their expressions grimly triumphant, ready to finalize what he didn't realize I already owned, the entire firm, a fortress of my own making, painstakingly built from the shattered remnants of his betrayal. The memory of that first moment, stranded and helpless, now fueled a cold, quiet satisfaction. The border, once the crucible of my deepest humiliation, had become the grand stage for my ultimate late-life triumph. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The air at the Sarzor-Bargas border crossing was a suffocating, almost palpable blend of diesel fumes, exotic spices, and the underlying scent of desperation that clung to every traveler. It was a place I knew intimately, a place where Marcus, my husband of nearly 40 years, always seemed to thrive. He was 65, his distinguished gray hair impeccably styled. A man who moved through chaos with an unsettling ease, his charisma a magnetic shield, his words a deceptive, honeyed bomb. He was currently hyping what he called our retirement nest. Egg deal, a complex import-export venture in Bargas that, according to his charming pronouncements, would secure our golden years in luxurious comfort beyond anything we'd ever dreamed. I, Eleanor, at 63, had spent the last several decades meticulously managing our household, raising our daughters, and supporting Marcus's increasingly elaborate business ventures, dreaming of the quiet, comfortable retirement he'd promised. My meticulous nature, my ability to untangle domestic complexities and ensure seamless organization, something Marcus always praised, even as he subtly dismissed its intellectual weight. "You're brilliant with the details, my dear," he'd, patting my hand dismissively as I balanced the household books. "I'll handle the grand strategy, the charming of the officials, the real money-making." I'd bought into it completely and utterly, believing in our shared idyllic future. We had been waiting in the notoriously long queue for vehicle inspections, the engine of our rented SUV idling, groaning softly in the oppressive heat. The sun, a white-hot disk in the sky, beat down relentlessly, making the shimmering asphalt feel like a furnace underfoot. Marcus had seemed off all morning, unusually quiet, his eyes constantly darting to his phone, his usual confident swagger replaced by a subtle, almost imperceptible edginess. I'd attributed it to pre-deal nerves, the kind of focused intensity that often preceded his biggest successes. He was, after all, a man who lived on the knife edge of high-stakes dealings. As we finally inched our way to the inspection booth, a glimmer of relief washed over me. We were almost through. "Just a moment, my dear," Marcus had murmured, his voice too low, too casual, too final. "I need to make a quick call about the final payment for the deal." "Don't move from the car." He'd squeezed my hand, a fleeting, almost imperceptible gesture, one that now felt like a cruel, calculated mockery. Then he simply melted into the dense crowd of hawkers, porters, and bewildered travelers. He took with him my passport, my wallet containing all our cash, our shared credit cards, and the briefcase that held every single piece of documentation for the Bargus deal, including my original birth certificate, property deeds, and other vital personal papers. He vanished as completely as if he'd never existed, swallowed by the human tide. At first, I didn't panic. Marcus was always disappearing for quick calls, his business dealings often shrouded in an aura of proprietary secrecy that I had nearly for decades, come to accept as part of his entrepreneurial mystique. I waited patiently, shielding my eyes from the blinding glare, watching the ceaseless flow of people, certain he would reappear any moment. 10 minutes stretched into 20, then an agonizing 30. The line behind us grew restless. A chorus of angry horns started blaring, and the stern-faced border guards began to eye my lone vehicle with blatant suspicion. My initial patience evaporated, replaced by a growing unease, then a cold, creeping dread that settled deep in my bones. I tried calling his phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, my fingers stiff with anxiety, fumbling on the small screen, the same dead end. Each unanswered ring amplified the chilling silence that had replaced his reassuring presence. I felt a tremor of true fear, primitive, sickening lurch in my stomach. I knew no one in this bustling, bewildering foreign land. My emergency contacts, my fiercely loyal daughters Leela in Dubai and Zara in Singapore, were thousands of miles away, effectively unreachable. My own phone, a simple, prepaid local device I used only for basic calls when traveling, had limited credit, and crucially no international roaming. Panic began to set in, a cold wave washing over me, despite the oppressive heat. How could he just leave? We had a life together, a shared future, a planned retirement, or so I had foolishly believed. My mind raced, frantically trying to construct a logical explanation, a sudden, catastrophic emergency, a misunderstanding of epic proportions. But the complete disappearance, the utter lack of any message, any sign, screamed something far more sinister, calculated, cruel abandonment. The border guard, a burly man with a weathered face and eyes that could bore holes through steel, lumbered towards my vehicle. "Madam," he grunted in heavily accented English, his voice devoid of patience, "you are holding up the line. Where are your documents? Where is your husband?" My throat felt raw, constricted by fear. My voice, when I finally managed to speak, was a shaky whisper. He stepped away for a moment. "He has the passport. He'll be right back." The guard's expression hardened, his gaze sweeping over my face, searching for deception. "No documents, no entry. You must move the vehicle." And my hands trembled as I fumbled for the keys. But even if I could move the car, where would I go? I had no money, no identification, no way to contact anyone. I was truly stranded, a helpless pawn in a cruel game I didn't even know I was playing. The humiliation burned, hotter than the desert sun, as passing travelers stared, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled contempt. Eleanor, a woman who prided herself on her quiet competence and careful planning, was reduced to a trembling, disoriented mess at a foreign border. It was in that moment of profound vulnerability, as despair threatened to consume my very spirit, that a flicker of something else ignited deep within me, a cold, unyielding, resolute anger. Marcus thought he had left me broken, dependent, and powerless. He had no idea he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The hours that followed Marcus's vanishing act were a disorienting blur of mounting desperation, punctuated by moments of chilling clarity that felt like ice shards, piercing my heart. The border guards. After a period of frustrated interrogation where they clearly believed I was deliberately being evasive, eventually seemed to accept my bewildering story of abandonment, if only out of sheer exasperation. They escorted me to a small, stuffy holding room, a concrete box with a single, high-set barred window that offered only a sliver of the blazing sky. The air within was thick with the oppressive scent of stale cigarettes, unwashed clothes, and a palpable sense of despair that seemed to permeate the very walls, suffocating me. They questioned me repeatedly, their inquiries sharp and accusatory, echoing with suspicions of illegal entry or involvement in illicit smuggling. Each question was a fresh, brutal stab, a relentless reminder of the impossible, humiliating situation Marcus had so cruelly placed me in. My pleas of a vanishing husband were met with weary skepticism, their eyes conveying that they'd heard every sob story. It sounded insane even to my own ears. Eventually, one of the more sympathetic female guards, a young woman named Serafina, offered a small, unexpected kindness, a glass of lukewarm water and a brief moment of quiet reprieve. "Madame," she said gently, her voice surprisingly soft in the harsh environment, "we cannot hold you indefinitely. You must find a way to contact someone from your country, your family, quickly." She then offered me her personal phone, a gesture of profound human compassion in a desolate place. To try and reach my daughter Leela, my daughter's phone rang and rang, a distant, mocking sound in the quiet room. Finally going to voicemail, my voice rough and raw from disuse and fear cracked, as I left a frantic, garbled message, trying to explain the incomprehensible. "Layla, darling, something's terribly wrong. He left me at the border. No passport, no money. I don't know what to do. Please call me back." It felt utterly futile, a desperate cry into the void, a final act of despair. As I handed Serafina her phone back, my fingers brushed against my small, well-worn prepaid device. A flicker of a long-dormant memory sparked within me. Years ago, my tech-savvy granddaughter had installed a rudimentary, offline accessible messaging app on it for just-in-case dire emergency situations, capable of sending encrypted low data messages to pre-selected contacts if I ever found myself in a true communication black hole. It was clunky, slow, and I'd almost forgotten its existence, but it offered a tiny glimmer of hope. With shaking hands, my aging fingers fumbling on the small screen, I navigated to the app and typed out a brief, desperate message to my daughters. Lila and Zara, my two precious lifelines. Marcus abandoned me, Sarzora Bargist border. No passport, no money. Need urgent help. My phone is local only. Use this app if possible. It took agonizing minutes for the message to transmit, each second feeling like an eternity as the tiny progress bar crawled across the screen. Then, I simply collapsed back onto the rough bench, the sheer exhaustion, physical and emotional, finally catching up to me, leaving me drained and empty. Leela, bless her fiercely loyal heart, responded within an hour. Her message, a stark string of capital letters, cut through my despair like a laser beam, "Mom. On my way. Don't move," Zara alerted. "Booking first flight. Hold tight." The relief was so profound it brought fresh tears, but these were tears of hope, a fragile solace, not despair. Layla, a successful international corporate lawyer known for her tenacity and razor-sharp intellect, moved mountains for me. And Zara, my sharp, analytical younger daughter, a senior auditor for a major multinational firm, would dissect this bewildering situation with ruthless precision, leaving no stone unturned. As the hours crawled by, confined in that stuffy, desolate room, a grim, sickening realization began to dawn. The initial overwhelming shock of abandonment began to recede, replaced by a cold, frighteningly analytical process. Why would Marcus do this? What had I missed? I replayed every interaction, every casual comment, every shared financial decision. Of our nearly 40 years together, searching for clues, Marcus had always presented himself as the financial whiz, the one with the Midas touch in business. He'd insisted on managing all our joint accounts, claiming his expertise would maximize our investments for our comfortable retirement. "It's simpler, darling," he'd always said, his voice smooth and persuasive, his hand patting mine patronizingly, "and my credit score gets us better rates on everything, unlocks better opportunities." I, trusting implicitly, as women of my generation often did, had let him handle it all. Our house, bought with his supposed inheritance as the down payment, was primarily in his name, mine added only after marriage, a sign of his deep trust. He'd called it. My own modest life savings, accumulated from years of careful household budgeting and small investments, had been enthusiastically pooled into our joint retirement investments, managed entirely by him. He'd even subtly discouraged my involvement in any community groups or hobbies that might have fostered independent connections, always emphasizing how much he needed me by his side, or how certain activities were too much for me at my age. I had believed it was true partnership, a mutual building of a shared future, a sign of his deep, unwavering commitment. Now, the bitter taste of realization filled my mouth, sharp and metallic, burning like acid. It hadn't been partnership. It had been methodical, calculated preparation for abandonment. His careful management of our finances, his insistence on controlling all our assets, his subtle discouragement of my independent social connections, his gradual isolation of me from friends and even extended family. It wasn't about building us up. It was about systematically stripping me of my autonomy, making me utterly dependent, utterly vulnerable, so that when he vanished, I would be truly helpless. My stomach churned with the sickening weight of this understanding, profound sense of betrayal that vibrated through my entire being. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Back to the story. Leela's arrival, just over 12 hours after Marcus's vanishing act, was a transformative force. She stormed into the dusty, stale holding facility, her perfectly tailored suit and an aura of formidable command instantly shifting the guard's demeanor from weary suspicion to deferential urgency. Seeing her familiar, furiously determined face was like a dam breaking within me. The raw fear, the crushing humiliation, the pent-up emotional torment of the past hours finally found an outlet in uncontrolled sobs as I collapsed into her strong, comforting arms. "Oh, ma'am," she whispered, her voice choked with barely contained rage. "Where the hell is Marcus? What has he done?" she demanded, her voice a low growl, as she swiftly helped me out of that oppressive room and into a pre-arranged discreet rental car. As she drove us to the nearest decent hotel, a quiet, sterile place, far removed from the chaos of the border, I recounted everything, my voice hoarse, the bewildering story tumbling out in fragmented, desperate pieces, the abandonment, the missing passport, the stolen money, the sickening, dawning realization of Marcus's long-term insidious manipulations. Leela listened intently, her jaw tight, her eyes like steel, occasionally interjecting with sharp, incisive questions that cut through my emotional haze, forcing me to recall specific details, dates, and names. "Oh, did you ever physically see the original loan documents for the house, Mom, or just what he showed you on his screen? Was your name specifically on the primary investment accounts, or were you merely an authorized user with limited access?" Her brilliant legal mind was already dissecting the situation, identifying every weak point in Marcus's carefully constructed facade. Once settled in the blessed quiet and comfort of the hotel room, Layla immediately began making urgent calls. Her phone pressed to her ear for hours, the hushed tones of legal and financial jargon filling the space. She contacted her extensive network of international corporate lawyers, private investigators specializing in asset recovery, and forensic financial specialists. Zara, true to her pragmatic nature, had already started working from Singapore, even before Lila had arrived at the border. Armed with the limited details I'd managed to convey in my desperate emergency message, Zara had begun accessing public financial records, running discreet background checks on Marcus's various business entities and cross-referencing names and dates. What they collectively uncovered in the next 48 hours would chill me to the bone, transforming my lingering hurt into a cold, unyielding firestorm of righteous, vengeful determination. Marcus hadn't just abandoned me. He had systematically stripped me of everything, meticulously planning his escape for months, possibly even years, with a chilling lack of conscience. The first bombshell came from Zara, delivered during a crackling, international call on Leela's secure line, late into the night. Ma'am, her voice, usually so calm and analytical, was now laced with disbelief and barely contained outrage. Marcus has been systematically liquidating assets for months, maybe even longer. The retirement nest egg deal in Barguest. It was a colossal smokescreen, Mom. The final act in draining every accessible resource. He was emptying all our joint accounts, transferring funds to layers upon layers of offshore accounts. Under shell corporations, I'm still trying to trace entities, designed to make the money vanish into thin air. She detailed a shocking pattern of suspicious transactions. Large sums funneled out. Small sums moved around between various accounts to create the illusion of legitimate, ongoing business activity. My own modest life savings, the small amounts I'd carefully accumulated and entrusted to him for our retirement, which I had believed were growing through his astute investments. They were largely paid back to me as small disbursements from these very disappearing funds. A clever, insidious way to funnel my own money back to me while he meticulously drained the real, substantial assets he had control over. The house, our supposed shared home, the place where I had envisioned spending my golden years, was another meticulously planned betrayal. Layla confirmed what I'd instinctively suspected from Zara's initial findings. Marcus had indeed refinanced the mortgage 6 months prior, discreetly removing my name from the deed entirely. He had brazenly forged my signature on the new loan documents, a heinous act that shocked me to my core. He now owned the house outright, free and clear, the purchase itself having been primarily funded by my own substantial initial investment from my early career, before I had chosen to focus on homemaking. He had systematically removed my legal claim to marital assets, making it appear as if nothing had changed on the surface, all while signing away my ownership behind my back. It was not merely financial abuse. It was outright identity fraud and forgery on a massive, chilling scale. But the most devastating discovery, the one that solidified my resolve and turned my simmering anger into a cold, unyielding fury, came when Zara, through her formidable network, managed to gain backdoor access to Marcus's private cloud storage, a place he'd often boasted was impenetrable. A testament to his own digital cunning, hidden deep within were folders meticulously labeled with my name, containing not only detailed financial schematics of his asset transfers, but also a series of disturbing emails and documents related to his business partners and his plans for a new, luxurious life elsewhere. Marcus wasn't just abandoning me. He was a sophisticated criminal. The documents revealed a complex web of shell companies, illegal import schemes, sophisticated international money laundering operations. Marcus wasn't a brilliant entrepreneur. He was a master criminal, using his legitimate-looking import-export business as a highly sophisticated front for illicit activities, leveraging any legitimate contacts or knowledge I had of customs and logistics to navigate his illegal shipments across borders without my knowledge. My meticulous nature, my understanding of complex regulations, my diligent preparation of manifests and declarations, I had unknowingly provided the perfect, unimpeachable cover for his crimes. The retirement deal in Barguest wasn't a business expansion. It was the final, largest payout from a massive, illegal operation. He was planning to disappear with the proceeds, leaving me to face potential legal repercussions for unknowingly aiding his crimes, or worse, leaving me destitute and exposed to his criminal underworld. The border crossing wasn't just an abandonment. It was meant to be my complete, convenient erasure, a calculated act to leave me helpless and utterly ruined. The deluge of sickening revelations about Marcus's sprawling criminal empire, far from breaking my spirit, ignited a fierce, unyielding resolve within me. The initial gut-trenching shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, unyielding determination to fight back. Lila and Zara, my incredible daughters, now my strategic war council, became the twin engines of my burgeoning counteroffensive against Marcus's intricate web of deceit. We worked tirelessly, fueled by strong coffee, countless late nights, and a shared sense of righteous indignation that burned brighter with each new discovery. My hotel room, once a mere temporary refuge from the chaos of the border, transformed into a clandestine command center, littered with printouts, complex legal documents, and sprawling flowcharts meticulously mapping Marcus's illicit operations and identifying his vulnerabilities. Zara, with her uncanny ability to unravel seemingly impenetrable financial transactions, was tracing the money like a bloodhound, following every cent. She unearthed accounts in obscure tax havens, shell corporations with impossibly convoluted ownership structures, and a network of unsuspecting intermediaries who had, like me, been unknowingly complicit in Marcus's far-reaching schemes. Each new discovery, though a fresh wave of sickening betrayal, was also a vital new piece of the puzzle, revealing the true, horrifying scale of his depravity and giving us more leverage. Lila, meanwhile, was meticulously laying the formidable legal groundwork. Her immediate focus was twofold: securing my immediate future and protecting any remaining salvageable assets from Marcus's rapacious reach. She swiftly initiated emergency legal proceedings in multiple jurisdictions to freeze any joint accounts Marcus hadn't yet managed to drain, though these proved to be lamentably few. More importantly, she began the arduous process of voiding the fraudulent refinancing of our house. Arguing a clear case of identity theft and forgery on my behalf. This, she warned me, would be a long, complex legal battle, navigating intricate international property laws and local statutes. But Leela's formidable reputation as a tenacious bulldog in the courtroom was a powerful beacon of hope, inspiring confidence even in my despair. "He left an undeniable paper trail, Mom," she'd stated, her voice grim but resolute, her fingers tapping rhythmically on a stack of incriminating documents. He was so confident in his control, so meticulous in his deception, that he inadvertently created the very evidence that will now unravel his empire and convict him. His arrogance, darling, is our greatest weapon. She quickly connected with local legal counsels specializing in cross-border financial crime, and, much to my surprise and quiet satisfaction, also started making discreet inquiries with various international law enforcement agencies. Marcus hadn't just committed fraud against me. He had engaged in activities that crossed national boundaries, violated multiple international laws, and touched the interests of powerful global entities. As the broad strokes of our legal and financial strategies began to take solid shape, my personal focus shifted to reclaiming my own life and, crucially, rebuilding my professional identity. For decades, I had been the diligent homemaker, the quiet support system behind Marcus's supposed genius. He had systematically undermined any glimmer of my own professional ambition, subtly convincing me that my skills were only truly valuable when channeled through his brilliant business. He'd praised my attention to detail while simultaneously belittling my capacity for big-picture strategy or independent leadership, always with a condescending pat on the hand. Now, armed with a terrifying but utterly liberating knowledge, I began to excavate the ambitious, tenacious woman I had once been, buried under layers of domesticity and Marcus's manipulative narratives. My most immediate practical challenge was stark. I had no independent funds. My modest life savings, carefully accumulated and entrusted to Marcus for our retirement, were gone, swallowed by his elaborate schemes. Even the salary I'd received from his firm for my unwitting assistance was tainted by its illicit origins. Layla, recognizing this critical vulnerability, swiftly established a temporary line of credit using some of her own substantial personal funds, a generous and deeply reassuring gesture that choked me with gratitude. "This isn't charity, Mom," she'd insisted, seeing the pride in my eyes. "This is an investment in your future, in your potential. If you focus on what you do best, unraveling Marcus's mess and building your own empire, we'll handle the financial buffer for now. Consider it a loan against future dividends." My very first tangible step was to formalize Richardson Communications Consulting (RCC), the consulting entity Marcus had secretly established using my credentials and license for his own nefarious purposes. I quickly learned that under the local laws of Barguest, the legal framework was surprisingly robust for the original license holder, especially in clear-cut cases of fraud and identity theft. This meant that while Marcus had leveraged my reputation and my legitimate credentials for his illicit activities, he had inadvertently created a legally sound entity that was, in fact, entirely mine to control. With Leela's astute guidance, I started the arduous process of reclaiming full control, cutting off Marcus's unauthorized access, updating official registries, and securing my business registration under my sole authority. It was a tedious, paperwork-heavy process, made exponentially more complex by the cross-border implications and the need for absolute legal precision. But each document signed, each form submitted, each bureaucratic hurdle overcome, felt like a small, hard one. Victory, a foundational brick laid in the rapidly constructing edifice of my new independence. I immersed myself in learning the intricacies of running a legitimate business from the ground up, something Marcus had always belittled me for not knowing or needing to know. I devoured books on financial management, client acquisition, operational logistics, and ethical corporate governance. The biting irony wasn't lost on me, the very aspects of business Marcus had claimed I was too creative or too detail-oriented to handle. The skills he had deliberately suppressed were now becoming my singular obsession, my unexpected path to late-life freedom and vindication. The initial exploratory contract with Globex. Logistics was far more than a mere professional opportunity. It was a strategic lifeline, a covert entry point into the very ecosystem Marcus had so cunningly exploited. Lena Petrova, the head of compliance at Globox, was a woman who radiated quiet authority and an unwavering commitment to corporate integrity. A true professional in every sense, she became an unexpected yet deeply vital ally in my burgeoning fight. She quickly recognized the formidable depth of my expertise, especially after I presented my preliminary findings, detailing with chilling precision how seemingly legitimate global shipping routes could be compromised by sophisticated criminal networks. I deliberately used Marcus's past tactics as generalized examples, couching them in neutral professional terms. But I watched Lena's reactions closely, observing the subtle shifts in her expression. Her growing alarm was palpable. She saw the insidious risks, the subtle vulnerabilities I exposed, which had previously been invisible to her highly trained, but less experienced eye, and I, unburdened by the personal, intimate knowledge of how a brilliant, deceptive mind like Marcus's truly operated. This recognition of my unique insight, honed by years of unknowingly facilitating his schemes, gave me a crucial opening. "Lena," I ventured one afternoon, as we sat hunched over large screens displaying Globex's intricate global shipping manifests, the fluorescent lights humming softly overhead in their immaculate corporate office. To truly understand the scope of these potential threats, to identify the systemic weaknesses that criminals exploit, one needs to examine the historical data with a fresh, unblinkered perspective. Sometimes the most innocuous-looking routine transactions can be part of a much larger, insidious pattern, hidden in plain sight amidst the sheer volume of global trade. I explained my theory, drawing on my deep understanding of Marcus's precise modus operandi. He had likely leveraged the unimpeachable reputation of legitimate, large-scale firms like Globex, inserting small, illicit shipments disguised as ordinary cargo into their high-volume routes. My objective was clear: to gain access to Globex's archived shipping data, specifically any records related to Marcus's defunct import-export firm and its myriad associated entities. Lena hesitated, citing strict client confidentiality protocols and the sheer, overwhelming volume of historical data, but my compelling arguments about protecting Globex's long-term integrity, about preemptive risk management to safeguard their hard-earned reputation from future compromise, eventually swayed her. She granted me limited, supervised access to their vast historical data archives. Under strict non-disclosure agreements, and with layers of digital security protocols. This pivotal access gave me the very tool I needed, the ability to expose Marcus's entire illicit operation from the inside out. Using his own meticulously crafted digital footprints as a damning breadcrumb trail, working through Globex's vast databases was like sifting through an ocean of sand for microscopic diamonds, a task requiring immense patience and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Each manifest, each bill of lading, each customs declaration, each invoice, each shipping container log, all were potential clues, tiny pieces of a colossal, damning puzzle. I cross-referenced dates, cargo weights, declared values, sender, and recipient names against the intricate financial data Zara was meticulously piecing together from the complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies. Slowly, painstakingly, Marcus's criminal fingerprint began to emerge, not as a single, bold stroke, but as 1,000 tiny, deliberate smudges of deceit. His method, I realized, was cunning in its very simplicity and sheer volume. He would orchestrate seemingly legitimate large-scale shipments through Globox, often for generic goods like bulk textiles, raw materials, or industrial components. But hidden within these legitimate containers, nestled amongst the lawful cargo, would be smaller, high-value, illicit goods, contraband that bypassed detailed customs checks due to the undeniable legitimacy of the main shipment. The trusted name of Globox Logistics and the sheer volume of global trade. My intimate knowledge of specific customs codes, typical cargo profiles, and industry norms, owned over years, allowed me to spot the minute anomalies. The tiny discrepancies that even the most professional auditors or experienced customs agents might overlook in a routine check. For example, a container declared as carrying 20 tons of raw cotton might, according to its true subtle weight discrepancy, be carrying 20.5 tons. It's the extra half ton, being a meticulously hidden cache of something far more valuable and illegal. Perhaps high-end electronics, illicit pharmaceuticals, or even precious metals. I found discrepancies in routing that added unnecessary transit time, but allowed for discrete transfers and inconsistencies in consignee addresses that, when cross-referenced with Zara's data, pointed to known criminal front operations. As I compiled this concrete, undeniable evidence from Globox's internal records, Lela and Zara were simultaneously building the comprehensive case from their respective ends. Zara's formidable forensic accounting skills led to undeniable links between Marcus's intricate network of shell companies and high-profile individuals in various countries, some with known ties to organized crime, others with significant political influence. She discovered patterns of rapid property acquisitions, fleets of luxury vehicles, and massive cash withdrawals that, when laid out, painted a clear, stark picture of a man living an incredibly lavish lifestyle funded entirely by illicit means. Lela, meanwhile, was making significant progress on the legal front. The local courts in Barguest had indeed recognized the validity of my identity theft claim regarding the house and were moving swiftly to freeze all of Marcus's known assets within their jurisdiction. This was a critical first step, a significant blow to his immediate liquidity. Though we knew Marcus had undoubtedly diversified his ill-gotten gains globally, anticipating such a move. The collective evidence was mounting with terrifying speed, creating an undeniable, comprehensive narrative of Marcus's calculated criminality. His sheer audacity and his meticulous self-incriminating record-keeping. We were no longer just reacting to his brutal abandonment. We were actively, aggressively dismantling his criminal empire, piece by agonizing piece, using his own hubris, his own meticulousness, and my unique insights against him. The hunted was now becoming the hunter, and Marcus was blissfully unaware of the trap closing around him. The sheer volume and undeniable clarity of the evidence, uncovered within Globox Logistics archives, combined with Zara's meticulous forensic financial analysis, proved to be the absolute tipping point. What had begun as a deeply personal quest for justice against Marcus rapidly escalated into something far larger. A global criminal investigation. Lena Petrova, witnessing the undeniable proof of how her highly respected company had been unknowingly exploited and potentially compromised by Marcus, became a fierce and unwavering advocate for my findings. She wasted no time. She personally escalated the matter to the highest levels of Globac's logistics corporate governance, to its board of directors and legal counsel. Globac's keen to protect their unimpeachable reputation to prevent any further inadvertent complicity in Marcus's schemes, and to eliminate future vulnerabilities within the global supply chain. Immediately launched an aggressive internal investigation and, crucially, wasted no time contacting relevant international law enforcement agencies. They wanted to be seen as proactive collaborators, not unwitting enablers. This critical juncture led to a pivotal and highly secretive meeting in a nondescript, heavily guarded office building nestled within the discreet financial heart of Zurich, Switzerland. The city, known globally for its banking secrecy and precise efficiency, was an apt backdrop for the gravity of the discussions. Present were an imposing array of international legal and investigative powerhouses. A senior representative from Interpol, signaling the global reach of Marcus's crimes, a seasoned analyst from the Financial Crimes Division of the European Union, indicating the illicit money flows across continents, and, most importantly, a sharp, unsmiling special agent from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. My daughter Leela, as my primary legal counsel and a formidable presence in her own right, accompanied me, her presence a powerful anchor in the overwhelming atmosphere. The room itself felt heavy with serious intent, the air thick with unspoken implications, and the palpable weight of high-stakes international cooperation. I sat at the large, polished conference table, facing these formidable figures, and systematically laid out my findings. I explained in clear, concise terms how Marcus, a man of 65, had utilized legitimate logistics pathways for illicit trade, how my own expertise in customs and supply chain management, honed over decades, had been unwittingly instrumental in his schemes, and, most powerfully, how his very meticulousness and record-keeping had now become his undeniable undoing. I showed them the specific anomalies I'd unearthed in thousands of shipping manifests, the minute deviations in cargo weights that hinted at hidden compartments, the subtle inconsistencies in customs declarations, and the carefully disguised payment trails that linked seemingly legitimate transactions to a labyrinth of shell companies. I presented photographic evidence of shipments, cross-referenced with financial transfers, painting a comprehensive picture of his methods. I brought a lifetime of experience in noticing small details, patterns that might seem insignificant too. A younger, less experienced eye, but which, when combined, revealed a terrifying larger picture. The HSI agent, Agent Miller. A stern but intensely attentive woman, with piercing eyes that missed nothing, listened with an intensity that made me realize profoundly the true gravity and scale of Marcus's operations. When I finished, she confirmed, her voice quiet but firm, that Marcus had indeed been on their radar for some time. Suspected of involvement in high-value smuggling and organized crime. However, she admitted they had never been able to definitively link him to the larger, more sophisticated networks, or to fully understand the intricate mechanics of his modus operandi. My evidence, painstakingly compiled and presented with undeniable clarity, provided precisely the missing links. It revealed that Marcus was not just a mere player in a small-time criminal scheme. He was a central, indispensable figure, a sophisticated logistics mastermind, enabling a sprawling, multi-continental network of international contraband from illicit goods to even more sinister commodities. Ms. Eleanor, Agent Miller stated, her gaze unwavering, "Your information is invaluable. Your husband's activities extend far beyond what we initially suspected. He's a key enabler for multiple criminal organizations across several continents, facilitating operations that touch illicit arms, human trafficking, and vast sums of laundered money." The sheer scale of his depravity sent a cold shiver down my spine. Reinforcing the urgency of our mission, the revelation that Marcus was a high-value target for international law enforcement was both terrifying in its implications and strangely empowering. My abandonment, a cruel and deeply personal act of betrayal, had inadvertently opened the door to dismantling a significant, dangerous criminal enterprise. The International Task Force proposed a formal, meticulously drafted agreement. I would cooperate fully, providing all the information, insights, and strategic understanding I possessed. In exchange for comprehensive personal protection, robust legal support throughout the complex proceedings, and, eventually, full restitution of my stolen assets. There was also the crucial promise of a clean slate, a chance to rebuild my professional life free from the pervasive shadow of Marcus's crimes and any potential legal fallout from my unwitting involvement. It was an offer I couldn't and wouldn't refuse. My intensely personal fight for justice, born from humiliation, had transcended mere vengeance. It was now about helping to bring down a global criminal network that had inflicted harm on countless others. The collaboration began immediately. Intense and all-consuming. I worked closely with Agent Miller and her dedicated team, poring over more encrypted data, identifying more illicit shipments, and deciphering Marcus's increasingly complex coded communications. My unique on-the-ground understanding of customs, procedures, international trade nuances, and the illicit methods used to circumvent them allowed me to interpret information that even seasoned, highly trained investigators might have missed. I became an unofficial but indispensable expert consultant for the task force. My skills, once ruthlessly exploited, now absolutely critical in the pursuit of justice. The hours were long, the work emotionally draining, often requiring me to relive uncomfortable memories, but each step brought me closer to not only reclaiming my life, but ensuring Marcus faced the full, unyielding force of international law. The hunt was officially on, the net was closing, and Marcus, somewhere out there, enjoying his ill-gotten gains, had no idea how swiftly his carefully constructed world was about to collapse as the International Task Force intensified its relentless investigation. Leveraging my unparalleled insights and the formidable mountains of data we had meticulously compiled, Marcus's meticulously constructed world began its inevitable, agonizing unraveling. He had always prided himself on his mastery of evasion, his uncanny ability to constantly move, to swiftly shift his illicit funds across borders, and to expertly alter his digital footprints, disappearing into the vast anonymity of the internet. But even his cunning couldn't outrun the combined focused might of Interpol, the USHSI, and most powerfully, a determined ex-wife who understood his every calculating move. The initial freezes on his known assets in Bargest, executed with lightning speed by Leela's team, were just the opening salvo. Soon, bank accounts in obscure offshore havens, previously considered impenetrable, began to be flagged by vigilant financial intelligence units. His labyrinthine network of shell corporations, designed to obscure true ownership, were systematically red-flagged. And, critically, his carefully cultivated network of criminal associates, who had long benefited from his logistical genius, started to feel the intense, tightening pressure of international scrutiny. Intelligence reports, delivered to me by Agent Miller with a grim satisfaction, indicated a palpable growing paranoia on Marcus's part. His usual flamboyant, ostentatious lifestyle became noticeably more discreet. His communications, once brash, now clipped and guarded, laced with suspicion. He was, to borrow Agent Miller's apt analogy, a cornered rat in an ever-shrinking maze, and the walls were closing in, brick by agonizing brick. My role within the International Task Force had evolved, dramatically transitioning from a mere informant to an indispensable strategic consultant. I wasn't just providing raw data. I was helping the seasoned agents understand the intricate psychology of someone like Marcus, predicting his desperate next moves based on his deeply ingrained patterns of deception and self-preservation. I meticulously analyzed his habits, his boasts, even the casual, offhand comments he'd made over the years about his supposed genius for exploiting legal and logistical loopholes. This unique, intimate understanding proved to be invaluable, offering the task force a predictive edge they had never possessed. We anticipated a large, desperate, and complex move on his part, a final, audacious attempt to liquidate a significant portion of his remaining illicit fortune and vanish permanently into the global underworld, perhaps buying a new identity. In a safe haven, our intelligence, pieced together from multiple sources, pointed to a massive, intricate transaction involving a particularly vulnerable international customs firm that had tragically inadvertently facilitated some of his past illicit shipments due to its lax internal controls and outdated systems. This firm, due to its critical global reach and a recent, highly public internal scandal that had battered its reputation and finances, was ripe for a hostile acquisition, a perfect target for Marcus to legitimize his stolen funds and secure a new, unimpeachable base of operations for his continued criminal activities. This, I realized with a sudden, chilling clarity, was my moment. This was the opening I had been unknowingly preparing for, the precise opportunity to not just bring Marcus to justice, but to dismantle the very framework of his operations. The target was Global Customs Solutions, GCS, a long established, once highly respected international customs firm, now teetering on the brink of collapse due to the aforementioned significant cyber-attack that had severely compromised its data and severely tarnished its once sterling reputation. Marcus, with his predatory instincts and cold, calculating opportunism, saw only a distressed asset he could acquire cheap, inject his vast illicit funds into, and then transform into a seemingly legitimate, powerful front for his ongoing criminal enterprises. What he didn't realize, what he could never have conceived, was that I, Eleanor, knew GCS intimately, perhaps better than anyone outside its founding family. During my extensive corporate logistics career, long before Marcus had cunningly lured me away with his deceptive promises, I had worked extensively with GCS, collaborating on major international projects. I understood their core infrastructure, their legacy systems, their key personnel, their operational bottlenecks, and, crucially, their immense, untapped underlying value. They were not merely a company. They were a foundational cornerstone of international trade. A firm whose specialized services were absolutely indispensable for facilitating seamless global commerce. Instead of passively allowing Marcus to acquire them and pervert their purpose, I decided with unshakable resolve that I would. I would take control of GCS. It was an incredibly bold, almost audacious plan, fraught with immense financial and logistical risks. But my experience with Globex Logistics, and specifically the trust I had painstakingly built with Lena Petrova, provided the critical leverage. Lena, now a staunch and vocal supporter of my efforts, understood the gravity of the situation. I presented her with an unconventional, yet compelling proposal, a strategic partnership between Globex and my revitalized Richardson Communications Consulting, RCC. Focused explicitly on acquiring and critically rehabilitating GCS, I argued, passionately and logically. That a joint acquisition would not only protect Globex's unimpeachable reputation from future association with Marcus, but it would also eliminate a massive potential point of vulnerability in the global supply chain, and, strategically, expand both our service offerings exponentially into a new, highly lucrative domain. The financial backing required for such a monumental acquisition was immense, bordering on impossible for me alone. However, with the full backing of Globex's executive board, convinced by Lena's advocacy and my compelling arguments, and a quiet, discreet financial arrangement facilitated by Agent Miller's team regarding future asset recovery from Marcus's now exposed criminal network, the impossible began to materialize into a tangible reality. The strategy was to move with unparalleled swiftness and absolute silence, acquiring GCS before Marcus even fully comprehended what was happening, effectively cutting off his last, most vital escape route and trapping him within his own crumbling empire. The race to acquire Global Customs Solutions GCS was a high stakes. breathless covert operation playing out simultaneously on two distinct yet intricately connected fronts. On one side, Marcus, increasingly desperate, financially constrained, and mentally cornered, was making aggressive, erratic moves to secure GCS as his final, desperate escape hatch. His last chance to legitimize his illicit fortune and disappear. He believed he had the advantage of surprise, his immense, hidden illicit war chest, and his ruthless cunning. Had no idea that I, Eleanor, was privy to his every move. Every subtle financial maneuver, every whispered conversation about his desperate planning. On the other side, my formidable, small, elite team, comprising my daughter Leela's brilliant legal strategists, my daughter Zara's incisive financial forensics experts, the covert, highly disciplined arm of the International Task Force, working under Agent Miller's precise directives, was working in seamless concert with Globex Logistics to execute a swift, preemptive acquisition. Time, we knew, was of the absolute essence. Every hour, every minute counted. My intimate, almost encyclopedic knowledge of GCS's internal workings proved to be the ultimate, irreplaceable differentiator in this high-stakes corporate espionage. I knew their intricate legacy systems, their often overlooked vulnerabilities, the names and personalities of their key, disillusioned personnel, their operational bottlenecks, and even the subtle nuances of their corporate culture, which was reeling from the cyberotic, its comprehensive understanding built over decades of working alongside them, allowed our combined legal and financial teams to move with unprecedented speed, precision, and surgical efficiency. While Marcus was still painstakingly conducting his initial due diligence, a process he usually rushed, but was now forced to scrutinize given his dire circumstances. We were already drafting complex acquisition documents, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of international corporate law, and securing the necessary, often opaque, regulatory approvals across multiple jurisdictions. Our legal team, spearheaded by the indefatigable Leela, utilized a sophisticated legal strategy that involved layered investments, deliberately opaque holding companies, and strategically timed financial disclosures to mask our true intentions from Marcus. He was looking for direct, traditional competitors, wasn't looking for a collective of former victims, ethical corporate partners, and global law enforcement working in such seamless, devastating concert, the most challenging and often nerve-wracking. The aspect was meticulously managing the flow of critical intelligence to the task force, while simultaneously maintaining the absolute secrecy of our intricate acquisition efforts. Agent Miller's team was tracking Marcus's bids and counteroffers in real time, receiving detailed reports of his every attempt to secure a foothold within GCS, allowing them to subtly and legally interfere with his progress without revealing our grand strategy. I, in turn, fed them strategic information about GCS's specific vulnerabilities that Marcus might target weak points in their internal controls, overlooked regulatory gaps, or compromised data pathways, allowing Agent Miller's operatives to subtly introduce bureaucratic delays, expose minor but legitimate compliance issues, or generate last-minute, legitimate competing bids that seemed to materialize out of thin air. It was a delicate, perilous dance, a constant, high-wire act balancing the pursuit of criminal justice with the execution of a massive, complex corporate takeover, all under the very nose of a dangerous, increasingly desperate criminal. As our acquisition offers steadily moved forward, gaining momentum with each passing day, Marcus's mounting frustration became acutely evident in his intercepted communications. He was encountering unexpected roadblocks at every turn, inexplicable bureaucratic delays, last-minute competing bids that defied his understanding of the market, and seemingly random surges in GCS's asking price. His characteristic arrogance was slowly, agonizingly, replaced by palpable agitation, then by outright unrestrained fury. "Someone is playing games," we heard him snarl in one intercepted call to a bewildered associate. His voice a low, dangerous growl, and they're playing. With my money? My last chance. Little did he know, the someone was the very person he thought he had left broken, helpless, and utterly forgotten at a dusty border crossing. The psychological victory was almost as profoundly satisfying as the impending financial and legal one. Every obstacle he faced, every moment of confusion, every setback was a direct testament to my strategic planning. My intimate understanding of his mind and the seamless, powerful coordination of my incredible, dedicated team. The race was tightening, the stakes impossibly high, but we were undeniably ahead, inching closer to the finish line, ready to spring the trap that would definitively end Marcus's reign of deceit. The day the acquisition of Global Custom Solutions, GCS, was officially finalized, dawned crisp and clear in Maria Aurora, central Luzon, Philippines, a beautiful, almost serene contrast to the storm that was about to break over Marcus's head. The public announcement, meticulously timed by Leela's team, affirmed that GCS had been successfully acquired by a strategic partnership between Globox Logistics and the newly established holding company representing my revitalized Richardson Communications Consulting RCC. The news rippled through the international trade and financial sectors, a significant corporate maneuver. For Marcus, however, who had just submitted his own final, aggressive bid for GCS, convinced he had secured his ultimate prize. This public announcement was nothing short of a cataclysmic blow. He had been so certain, so utterly convinced that GCS was his for the taking, his last, most vital escape route. Now it was snatched away right under his nose. His intercepted communications, once filled with impatient boasts, were now laced with pure disbelief, quickly morphing into a desperate scramble for information. They painted a vivid picture of a man utterly blindsided, his carefully constructed world collapsing with the speed of a house of cards. But the corporate takeover was merely the public face of our victory. The true, deeply personal unveiling of Marcus's downfall was meticulously orchestrated to happen at the precise moment of his capture. Agent Miller had planned Marcus's apprehension with surgical precision, timing it to coincide exactly with the public announcement of the GCS acquisition. Marcus, still oblivious to the true scale of the net closing around him, was attempting to cross a different, more remote border checkpoint, hoping to access one of his last remaining untraced caches of funds. He believed he was making a discreet, strategic move to secure his escape. He had no idea that his every subtle movement, every coded communication, was being monitored by the International Task Force. The idea, as Agent Miller grimly put it, was to let him walk directly into a situation where the irony of his capture would be as profound and devastating to his ego as the legal consequences he was about to face. I wasn't physically present for his arrest, a deliberate choice to avoid the emotional maelstrom of a direct confrontation in that raw moment. However, I received real-time updates from Agent Miller's secure channel, vivid descriptions of the scene unfolding hundreds of miles away. Marcus, his distinguished gray hair now disheveled, ever the master of deception, approached the border guard with his customary false confidence, attempting to present a falsified passport and a convoluted explanation for his cross-border movements. He was stopped the moment the arresting officers read him his rights, their voices cutting through the mundane sounds of the checkpoint. Agent Miller's team ensured he received a special delivery. It wasn't a standard legal summons, nor was it a warrant. It was something far more devastating to his carefully cultivated self-image, a meticulously prepared, highly confidential document packet. Inside were the freshly printed official press releases detailing the acquisition of GCS by my firm alongside a stark, undeniable summary of the financial crimes we had exposed, undeniable proof that my expertise, once his unwitting shield, was now his ultimate undoing. The effect, Agent Miller later recounted, was instantaneous and absolute. Marcus, arrogant and self-assured just moments before, reportedly went utterly pale, his eyes widening in a sudden, horrifying comprehension. His carefully constructed composure shattered completely. The man who had abandoned me at the border, leaving me with literally nothing but the clothes on my back, now realized that the very person he thought had utterly destroyed had not only survived, but had strategically outmaneuvered him to acquire the very firm he needed for his escape. The chilling knowledge that I owned GCS, that I was the precise, relentless force behind his sudden, spectacular collapse, was, in that moment, more potent and psychologically crushing than any handcuffs. He was not just arrested, he was publicly humiliated, stripped of his last illusion of control, personally devastated by the very woman he had tried to erase from existence. The circle was complete, drawn in the dust of his self-inflicted defeat, with Marcus finally in custody. Facing a staggering mountain of federal and international charges, the aftermath was a whirlwind of relentless legal proceedings and the monumental, exhilarating task of rebuilding my life and, by extension, global custom solutions. Marcus's trial became a sensational, front-page news story, dominating headlines across multiple continents. It wasn't just a criminal trial, it was a sprawling expose, laying bare the vast, insidious network of corruption, money laundering, and illicit trade he had so ruthlessly orchestrated. My testimony, meticulously prepared over countless hours with Leela and Agent Miller, was pivotal. I, Eleanor, a woman in my early 60s, spoke with a calm, unshakable clarity, detailing his systematic deception from the deeply personal betrayal of our marriage and his calculated psychological manipulation to the cold, corporate exploitation of my professional skills for his sprawling criminal enterprise. The evidence was irrefutable, an overwhelming torrent of irrefutable proof, countless bank records detailing illicit transfers, intercepted communications filled with his incriminating boasts, my own detailed analysis of his fraudulent shipping activities, and most damningly, Marcus's own meticulously kept records of illicit payouts and asset transfers, his ego ensuring his downfall. The judge, clearly appalled by the calculated, cruel nature of Marcus's crimes and his egregious abuse of trust, handed down a severe and unyielding sentence: 20 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for a significant portion of that term. The courtroom, packed with reporters and a smattering of his unwitting victims, fell silent as the verdict was read. The judge specifically highlighted how Marcus, a man of advanced years, had systematically exploited his wife's trust, professional reputation, and personal vulnerability to facilitate widespread corruption, while simultaneously planning her imprisonment and financial ruin for his own benefit. The verdict brought a profound, deeply satisfying sense of justice, a vindication that settled deep within my bones. He wouldn't just pay for his crimes against the law, he would pay for his egregious crimes against me, against the very sanctity of trust and partnership he had so carelessly shattered, in parallel with Marcus's conviction. The dedicated legal and financial teams, led by Lila and Zara, worked tirelessly to recover the stolen assets. The global task force, now armed with Marcus's fully deciphered criminal records and the meticulous mapping of his illicit network, systematically moved to seize his ill-gotten fortune from every hidden corner of the globe. Leela informed me that between the criminal restitution order and the complex web of civil judgments across multiple jurisdictions, I had successfully recovered over $3.5 million in stolen assets, plus significant interest and penalties accrued over the years. It was a sum far beyond anything I had initially dared to anticipate. A stark testament to the true scale of Marcus's audacious thievery and the extraordinary thoroughness of the international investigation. The house in Maria Aurora, Central Luzon, Philippines, which he had fraudulently refinanced and claimed solely as his own, was returned to my full, unencumbered ownership, the fraudulent mortgage entirely voided, though I now owned it free and clear, a magnificent property by any standard. I knew, deep down, that I could never truly live there again. Every room, every corner, every shared memory was too deeply tainted by his insidious betrayal and calculated deceit. It was a monument to his lies, not our life. I quickly decided to sell it, using the proceeds to further invest into the growth and transformation of GCS and to purchase a new, untouched property, a physical space that truly represented my new, independent, and unburdened life. Beyond The undeniable financial and legal victories, the true, profound rebuilding, was intensely personal. I immersed myself, body and soul, in the transformation of global customs solutions. My vision was clear, precise, and unyielding: to transform GCS into the most ethical, secure, and technologically advanced customs firm in the world. We structured the company from the ground up, implementing stringent new compliance protocols, investing heavily in cutting-edge cybersecurity and AI-driven analytics, and, most importantly, fostering a deeply embedded culture of absolute transparency and unimpeachable integrity. A culture that was the complete antithesis of Marcus's fraudulent methods. My deep background in corporate logistics and customs, honed over decades, even if quietly, combined with my hard-won, visceral understanding of criminal exploitation within trade routes, made me uniquely qualified, almost uniquely destined, to lead this charge. Under my unwavering leadership, GCS didn't just recover from its past scandal. It flourished beyond all previous expectations, expanding its global reach and becoming a widely recognized benchmark for secure, ethical, international trade. It was a tangible testament to my skills, my vision, and my unwavering commitment to integrity. This wasn't just a business, it was a personal statement, a living monument to my resilience. 6 months after Marcus's resounding conviction, I stood at the expansive window of my sleek new office, perched high above the bustling skyline of a revitalized Manila. The city below, alive with ceaseless energy, felt like a living testament to my own journey of rebirth and defiant growth. Below me, the sprawling port, a complex nexus of global trade and commerce, hummed with constant activity, a stark, powerful contrast to the dusty, chaotic border crossing where my entire nightmare had brutally begun. Global Customs Solutions, GCS, under my unwavering leadership, was not merely thriving. It was pioneering groundbreaking new standards in international trade, security, and compliance. We had implemented innovative blockchain-based tracking systems, forged powerful partnerships with customs agencies worldwide to actively combat illicit trade, and built an unblemished reputation for unimpeachable integrity and cutting-edge efficiency. The small team I started with at RCC had blossomed into a global enterprise, impacting real, positive change in the complex world of logistics and trade. A far cry from Marcus's shadowy dealings. The phone on my desk vibrated gently. It was Lena Petrova calling from Globax Logistics, her voice filled with a genuine admiration that was deeply validating. "Eleanor," she began, her tone reflecting true respect, "your initiative and leadership have truly transformed GCS. Strategic partnership has been incredibly successful, not just in terms of profitability for both our companies, but, more importantly, in reinforcing our collective commitment to ethical global commerce. We're consistently seeing the tangible, positive impact of your vision on the entire industry. This validation, coming from a respected leader in an industry I once only consulted for under Marcus's shadow, it's profoundly fulfilling." Later that afternoon, 2 familiar, comforting presences entered my office. It was my daughter Leela, her usual professional poise, softened by a warm smile, followed by my daughter Zara, her analytical gaze now filled with pride. They weren't just my daughters anymore. They were indispensable members of my new life, my trusted advisors, and fellow board members of my burgeoning business empire. "Ma'am," Layla announced, her eyes sparkling with satisfaction, "the last of the civil suits against Marcus's hidden assets have been successfully settled. Every single penny recovered, every legal loose end tied up. You are officially free and clear with a clean slate, and I might add, an incredibly impressive fortune. Zara, always practical, added in your current portfolio. Factoring in the exponential growth of GCS and your incredibly shrewd strategic investments, definitively places you among the top entrepreneurs in the region. Marcus's so-called golden touch was absolutely nothing compared to yours." We spent the evening celebrating not just the legal and financial victories, but the much deeper triumph of resilience over betrayal, of light over shadow. We reminisced about that harrowing day at the border, the sheer terror and profound despair that had almost consumed me, and marveled, almost disbelievingly, at how far I had come. The woman Marcus had abandoned, stripped bare of her identity, her resources, and her very sense of self, had not only survived, but had risen from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more powerful than he could ever have possibly imagined. My journey had been arduous, marked by immense pain, pervasive uncertainty, and moments of crushing doubt, but it had ultimately forged me into the person I was always meant to be, a decisive leader, a relentless innovator, and a powerful force for positive change in a world still grappling with hidden corruption. My story began with a brutal act of abandonment, but it fundamentally did not end there. It became a powerful, living testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest betrayals, the most profound heartbreaks, can paradoxically lead to the most transformative growth. Marcus had been so convinced he had left me stranded irrevocably, broken and utterly alone at that desolate border. He never, in his wildest, most arrogant dreams, realized that I would not only survive, but would go on to own the very customs firm he coveted, turning his last desperate gambit into my greatest conquest. And now, standing on the precipice of this new horizon, I was ready for whatever new challenges and opportunities lay ahead, completely, utterly, and fiercely on my own terms. My freedom was absolute. As the months turned into a year, my life stabilized into a rhythm of purpose and fulfillment that once seemed impossibly distant. Global Customs Solutions (GCS) became my magnum opus, a living testament to ethical innovation. We expanded into cutting-edge technologies like AI-driven risk assessment, predicting illicit trade patterns with unparalleled accuracy. Our training programs for customs officials worldwide became industry benchmarks, transforming global trade security. The company's growth wasn't just about revenue. It was about building a legacy of integrity, an impenetrable shield against the very kind of corruption Marcus had exploited. My personal reputation soared. I was no longer defined by Marcus's shadow, but celebrated as a visionary leader and a champion of ethical global trade. Invitations to speak at international conferences, advise governmental bodies, and contribute to policy reforms filled my calendar. I was sought after not just for my expertise, but for my story, a story of resilience that resonated deeply. With audiences worldwide, my personal life, once systematically isolated by Marcus, flourished anew. I reconnected with old friends, nurturing genuine relationships that were built on mutual respect and support, not manipulation. My bond with Layla and Zara deepened into an unbreakable sisterhood, a foundation of unconditional love and unwavering solidarity. We often spent evenings at my new residence, a beautiful, light-filled loft in Manila that was utterly free of Marcus's ghost, filled with laughter and plans for the future. These were relationships he could never taint, a happiness he could never steal. One quiet afternoon, I received a small, official-looking package. It was from Agent Miller. Inside was a framed certificate, a Citizen's Award from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Investigations, acknowledging my extraordinary cooperation and unwavering courage in dismantling a significant international criminal network. The irony was delicious. The woman Marcus had planned to commit to a psychiatric facility, deeming her mentally incompetent to steal her business, was now being honored by federal law enforcement for her courage and competence. It was the ultimate, irrefutable vindication. My journey had come full circle, but it wasn't a return to my old life. It was a leap forward into an entirely new existence. The scars of betrayal remained, but they had healed into powerful reminders of my strength. Marcus's abandonment, meant to destroy me, had inadvertently liberated me, forcing me to confront my own untapped potential and build a life of authentic power. I wasn't just wealthy, I was free, free from manipulation, free from fear, free to define my own destiny. My story began with a man who thought he could erase me, but it ended with me, Eleanor, standing tall, utterly unbound, owning not just a global customs firm, but the narrative of my own extraordinary triumph, the journey From being abandoned at a dusty border crossing to owning a leading global customs firm was unimaginable just a year ago. It was a testament to resilience, a brutal awakening that forged strength from the deepest betrayal. My story isn't just about reclaiming what was stolen. It's about building something infinitely better, something defined by integrity and empowerment. Up. Next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.